everybody that gets together on a Zoom, you're sort of presuming that everybody knows how to use their volume, knows how to connect their headset to the right configuration. And if their computer didn't, identify the headset you put in that you plugged into USB port, that you can walk them through some basic troubleshooting. That's just like one-on-one is complicated enough for a podcast. Now you maximize that with 5 people where you have a certain time that you're about to go live and you got to get everybody ready. That just adds a level of like stress.
Through the Noise Insights with Ernesto Gluecksmann and Mickey Panayiotakis.
Hi, Ernesto.
Hey.
It's weird doing this without the intros, you know?
Totally is. It's odd just doing this in general through the pandemic.
We've had one client that did an entire thing and forgot to record it.
Oh. Because you should just continuous recording, and then you get to choose if you want to clip something out.
Well, I know you had a topic in mind, but maybe I'll bring this out and you decide if you want to do this now or later. I want to talk a little bit about doing these virtual. Well, they're not really virtual. I mean, we say virtual, but what I mean is online. You know, they're live. They're all from remote, from home, and they're webinars. They're panel discussions. They're group video with constituents or members, and they're live on Zoom, or they're on YouTube live streamed or Facebook live stream, and it takes 2 or 3 people besides the host to kind of like run them smoothly.
Sure, if you want. I guess if you want to talk about that, I'm still kind of. I listen to so many podcasts that the idea of a live streamed event is still a little strange to me. I know it's very important in the nonprofit.
Yeah. So let's talk about you want to talk about that, and then we'll see. Sure. We'll deal we'll pivot. I know we're very technical here and get in the weeds of things, but I think one of the things we do a lot of, and I think you and I don't talk about it very much, is helping with kind of audio visual and virtual events, live events, but not live in person, of course, anymore, because we can't do that in these coming dark days. So we have a club of clients that do a lot of them, and they do them live, they record them, they live stream them, and the first thing to consider is that it usually takes 2 or 3 support people outside of the MC to actually run the event smoothly. There's someone who's, of course, the MC, who introduces the guests and so on. I don't want to call them host, because on a regular event it would be a host, but really when you have something like Zoom, you have hosts and co-hosts, and they have different actual technical capabilities within the platform, although you may never see them. They may never say anything. So you have to have someone who's in charge of like streaming to the live stream platform, whether that's YouTube or Facebook. You have to have someone who's has all the presentations and queues them up and shares the screen to watch them. That may be the presenter or the current panelist, or it may not. You have someone or 2 other people. If you have multiple platforms, it may be more than 2 that actually monitor all the discussions and the Q&As and respond to them and find ways to queue them up for the panelists. And a lot of times, if they're international events, there's those people that can also act as translators. So just before you even get into like the technical aspect of it, the video and the controls and features that you can enable and disable in Zoom or whatever application you use, just to run a smooth event with a whole bunch of guests and 4 or 5 or 10 panelists, you're already talking about 3 or 4 people before anybody even speaks. As my friend says, before you buy your first ice cube, you got to have 2 or 3 people lined up.
Yeah, that's why the pressure of live events for me, I don't know. I don't see it the worthwhile in the same way. Although I guess the main feature of having a live event or streaming it live is to get the immediate feedback from an online audience. So be able to get, does anybody have questions for the panelists, and then have somebody ask questions of the panelists, because you're asking to, in some ways, you're asking to limit the opportunity to consume the content unless you repurpose it, unless you publish the recorded version later. you're kind of saying you have to be at this time at 3:00 because we're gathering everybody at this time zone, and hope it all works with all these people. There aren't any technical difficulties or some.
Well, that's a big issue as well. And I think one of the things that comes up is with all the technologies, with the live streaming, Zoom. Zoom makes it super easy for you to do everything. A lot of these other platforms do, and I think we're getting to a point where it's so easy to do things that we don't think about whether we should be doing them. Like, should we have a live webinar with webinar participants and at the same time live stream it? And on two platforms or even just on one platform. Like, should we have that? Like, why do we live stream it on Facebook as well as doing it here? Just because we can. And that's where things start to fail. Zoom makes it easy for us to do it, but we never think about, should we? And secondarily, even though it looks easy, it's easy for us to do it, the infrastructure and the technology behind it is difficult. So the chances of it failing are fairly difficult. I mean, the Zoom was down earlier this morning. Facebook with Zoom connectivity, we had an event that we couldn't live stream on Facebook because that connectivity was down about 2 weeks ago. And that's for events that we've done and our clients have done that I've been involved in. So there's a lot of back and forth I'm having with some of our clients about how do we make this process smoother, more polished, and do we need to have everything live at the same time? And you said also repurposing. How do we repurpose it? Is it enough to record everything live and then throw it on the web? As who used to say that? We'll throw it on the web. Was that Jon Stewart?
Oh no!
Anyway, do we just record and throw it on the web, or do we want to have something where we have a limited audience and then we tease a kind of a drop on YouTube, at a later date, and have some sort of like a more limited Q&A, not with all our big name panelists, but maybe with just our host. Just can sit there and talk about the event with other participants. Like how can we repurpose that? And I see that happens on like traditional media as well. I'll see there's a big article that comes out of the New York Times with some very well known interview with a very, very well known person or something like that, and then the next week they'll have like a live Q&A with just a journalist, not the actual bigwig, about the article. So kind of do something similar to help expand our audience, put the same piece out in multiple times, and reuse the content, repurpose the content in ways that make more sense for the different time zones, the different audiences, and all the different platforms.
Yeah, I think if you think about, which we don't usually, but you think about how much we're not in control.
We don't think.
We don't think about how much we're not in control in terms of the technology that's with it. Like everybody that gets together on a Zoom, you're sort of presuming that everybody knows how to use their volume, knows how to connect their headset to the right configuration. And if their computer didn't, identify the headset you put in, that you plugged into USB port, that you can walk them through some basic troubleshooting. That's just like one-on-one is complicated enough for a podcast. Now you maximize that with 5 people where you have a certain time that you're about to go live and you got to get everybody ready. That just adds a level of like stress. So if you're going to have a panel, in my opinion,
be video, not just audio,
and video, and you got to make sure it looks good. Everybody's got the good enough lighting, and nobody.
See, I have to put something to cover my lighting up here because you can see I have my halo.
Right. Can't send a TV crew or anything to somebody on location because it's not thanks COVID-19. But all of that factors in. So if you're not going to actually really need to get audience feedback or questions, if you're not going to open it up for questions, maybe a live event doesn't make sense to me because there's just so much that could go wrong with your live event just on that, at that level.
Yeah. I think to me, the things we don't have control over aren't even things that the ones I think about are not even the ones that you're thinking about. And I'm thinking like, to me, I'm assuming if you're going to be coming on a Zoom call, you've done 500 out of them in the past month, so you know how your speakers work, right?
Hopefully.
But Zoom gives you all these options that make it seem like you're in control. Like I'm in control of whether I want to live stream to video, to YouTube, or to Facebook Live. But really, I'm not. You're giving me that switch to make me feel like I'm in control, but Zoom has to work. The Zoom APIs have to work. The Facebook APIs have to work. Facebook itself has to work. The connection
Your
between
internet
the network
connection,
has to work.
your guest
Exactly.
internet connections
And,
have to work.
and nobody, there's so many difficult things there that we have no insight, and nobody thinks, hey, is this actually something I'm in control? There's like the little flip switch that makes me feel in control. Doesn't mean that I actually have control over this entire process. And that's a bigger issue with technology. It's like all the privacy controls Facebook has, or the privacy control Android and Apple have. They make it you feel like you're in control because you have a lot of diodes you can go back and forth with. But what do you really want to know? What does it mean for you to keep your privacy? And do you have controls to do that?
Yeah. It's amazing any of this stuff actually works. Let's just say. So,
well,
consistently enough.
It's I was one of the early in my life was when the internet was. Well, you were there too when the internet was first happening. Like we're actually part of the people who built it. Like we strung it together with like baling wire and fiber optics when they came out, and these weird telephone lines that weren't supposed to do what we were making them do. So we tried to make them do it anyway. And eventually now we have some more robust telecommunications, actual like hardware lines, physical lines out in the open. But it's kind of strung, especially going to rural areas or places where everything is area. They're also kind of strung together with stuff still up on telephone poles. I mean, just think about it. The signal that you're using now goes up on a telephone pole somewhere, and if a tree falls in the forest and hits a telephone pole, you're not going to be able to hear your neighbor talk on the phone, right? Or, if it rains and your Wi-Fi connection is going down and all your neighbors at your apartment building are streaming their favorite YouTube, like super HD videos, you're going to get saturation of your Wi-Fi signal and you won't be able to have sufficient bandwidth to your call. So it's a problem.
Maybe the model should be sort of switched. In other words, I like what you said about the New York Times article and the Q&A afterwards. It's kind of like if I'm on my email and I get an announcement, there's this interesting person on the topic of interest, and they're going to talk about the topic. And the video, what's better? Join us next week at 3:00 to listen in on this topic, or the video's here. They're already talking about it. Here's the topic. Click, watch the video. You watch the video. After you've watched the video, another email comes out and says, hey, at 3:00 next week, if you'd like to ask questions to these panelists, they'll be on this system. And you can, I think that maybe that's the better motivation. I mean, people are so used to just like Googling for information, going on Netflix to watch them, like on demand is sort
that's
of
certainly
there,
the case
right?
for, I don't know. I think there's a case to be made that if it is a work, like if I were to send you something at like 3:30 today, or if I were to send you something like right now and say, hey, it's 4:00, right? Say, hey, Ernesto, join me for this like awesome discussion, something interesting right now. I could say it's the middle of the workday and I have 3 other calls to make before the day is over. So why don't I sign up for this webinar? But I mean, why does it have
signing up? It's just it's there. It's in our. If you can decide when you want to watch it whenever you want.
But I can't ask questions.
Oh, you can't ask questions.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
So I mean, why do we have to worry about is it live? Is it on the internet versus is it in person? Like when we have a party, if I'm gonna say, hey Ernesto, let's have a party, I'm not saying, hey, come over now, right? I mean, I could. You're welcome over anytime. But I'm not gonna have like 5 people for dinner if I call them up and say, hey, I'm having a party right now. Maybe right. When I was in the city, yeah, that would happen every night.
Yeah, but I was meaning the model of not a live. You don't say the live event is happening right now. You would say that here's this recorded piece of content. If it interests you, you can watch it whenever you want. And then if of those people that watch it, if you were able to then just follow up with them saying, hey, we saw that you watched this. If you had any questions, here's at 3:00 next week or plan ahead. to drive people that are really motivated enough to ask questions, to want to have some interactive experience. Versus what I'm seeing mostly now is I get invited to webinars all over the place. They're at pre-described times that a week in advance, but I'm still busy. Like I have to remember to register. I have to then remember to put it in the calendar. Then on the day of, I have to remember that I did this and decide. It's just so many.
Which makes it don't interest you.
Well, yeah, they don't interest me as much, and most of them
but there's
bail out.
I think there's a space for both, but I also think that we've kind of gone beyond that and say, okay, now not only are we going to have the webinar with our panelist discussion and 100 people to come in like they would normally do in our physical location in an auditorium for a Q&A. Now we also want at the same time broadcasting to the world on YouTube and Facebook Live. And like, why would you want to do that at the same time? I mean, do you really have that big an audience? I mean, maybe you do. Why not get it out there? At the same time, it may be also nicer to say, let's do this as our kind of our intimate event for 100 people plus 5 panelists, and then later on we publish this to Facebook Live. There's some benefit to having a more intimate event, and the different benefit of having a whole bunch of people. If you have 1,000 people watching, you're not going to get to all of our questions. If you have 12, you might. So I think there's a reason for everything, but because we can't do everything, we haven't really thought about what is our goal and what is the need that we're trying to meet here. We're just doing everything that's possible because we can.
Yeah,
and it seems easy for us.
Right. So much of technology, it's like measuring, you go to Google Analytics that measures all the web traffic. There's so many things it measures. It's astounding now. It's like ridiculous. But it's because they can measure it. It doesn't mean that it's all particularly useful
or may not be what you need.
Or it just may not be what I simply need. But there's a lot of we create this feature or we measure this data point because it's a data point that we can easily get to or a feature we can create. We don't really know if it's useful until people use it.
It's also there to make you feel good about what you did and to continue.
And increasing impressions.
Exactly. To make you feel like whatever platform you're using is working. So Facebook is not going to show you data compared to other platforms like yours, to other platforms that aren't Facebook, number one, and other organizations next to yours, because they want to show you getting more and more views, because that's all they're going to show you cumulative views. Cumulative views will always go up, right? You're not going to have negative. You're not going to go down when all you have is cumulative views, right? Similarly, Google compares you to last week or last year, but it's not going to compare you to your competitor necessarily. I guess you can do some of that, but not really in Google Analytics, because they want you to feel good about what you're doing. They want they want you to feel like you've succeeded. But if your money, if you had your money in Google Analytics, right, it would go up and up and up all the time. Presumably, your stocks, your investments. But your broker, you don't judge your broker based on how much money you made. You judge him based on how much money you made compared to a predefined index. Like if you made 5% last year and the Dow made 20% last year, you go to your investment and say, what the hell am I paying you for? I could just go to the Dow and do better. Right?
Right. Yeah, I think the analogies in the podcast world we're talking about is, I think I came across one podcast that we have 100,000 downloads, and that was it. So we're like, what does that mean? Does it mean like 100,000 like every month? That's pretty awesome. 100,000 the whole time you've existed for the last 10 years. Okay, where is it? What does that mean? Right?
Yeah.
Don't worry about those details. It's 100,000. Yeah. It's a big number. Sounds big. Good enough.
Absolutely. All right. I think we've beat this horse to death.
Yeah. Thanks, Mickey. If you come across any answers on how to optimize this video / audio recorded experience, bro, going
the TTN did a decent job. Did you watch any of that? Did you watch any of the conventions?
They did. Who did they use? They used somebody in Hollywood, right? They used that. It the coordination of that, it was a live show with that many people teed up and tested.
How many people were actually live on stage at the DNC convention?
I think there was few. I think much of that had to be pre-recorded.
A lot of it was pre-recorded. A lot of it was live by video via Skype or whatever it is. But so how many people were actually in person?
I don't know. Be an interesting thing to look
but
into.
Even that looked kind of weird, because you had like the host sitting there on stage, and then you have this like humongous video screen. And the only way to have production, it turns out, is to have this humongous, like, I don't know, 400 feet long video screen behind you.
That makes it look polished, Mickey. That's polished. That's polished. Yeah. And look like you're serious, legit.
Yeah, you have money to spend. Okay, well, anyway. Have a good one, Ernesto. I'll talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
For more episodes of Through the Noise, go to throughthenoise.us.